I'm Emily Guy Birkin, and you're listening to Deep Thoughts About Stupid Shit. Because pop culture is still culture, and shouldn't you know what's in your head? On today's episode, I will be sharing my deep thoughts about the 1997 film The Fifth Element with my sister, Tracie Guy Decker. And with you. Let's dive in.
Have you ever had something you love dismissed because it's just pop culture? What others might deem stupid shit, you know matters. You know it's worth talking and thinking about. And so do we. So come overthink with us as we delve into our deep thoughts about stupid shit.
So, Trace, I know you've seen this movie, but tell me what you remember about The Fifth Element.
Yeah, it has been a minute since I've seen this movie. I've definitely seen it more recently than 97, but it's been a while since I've seen it. I remember liking it a lot. Mm-hmm. So, and we've talked about it before briefly when we talked about different sort of tropes and feminist analysis of different tropes. And we talked about Born Sexy yesterday, which I'm sure we'll get into with Leeloo. So the things I remember Bruce Willis's like hard-boiled cab driver. Mm-hmm. I remember Leeloo as this little slip of a thing in less than a slip of a thing in terms of what she was wearing. And the priest who had like a monk's tonsure and he was the only one who could communicate with her at first because she was speaking like the ancient language, but she's super smart. So she like picked up on modern language quickly. I very clearly remember her crying as she's like watching, learning all of the history of the world and learning about war. I remember enjoying the announcer, the TV announcer, Chris Tucker.
Chris Tucker playing Ruby Rod.
Yeah, I remember really enjoying that character. Mm-hmm. And Eve Salvo, very briefly, makes an appearance in this film. She was a runway model who wore her head shaved and has like a big dragon all the way around her scalp. And she was the inspiration for my tattoo. Listeners, I have a tattoo of a Chinese dragon on my scalp, which you will never see. But Salvo was like what I was thinking of. Mine is much, much, much more modest than Salvo's tattoo. But that's a thing that I remember of The Fifth Element. So it's pretty disjointed, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But talk to me. Why are we talking about The Fifth Element today? What's at stake?
So I saw this movie in the theater. This was came out when I was in high school. When I was in high school, I saw nearly every film that came out. I was a regular moviegoer. I really enjoyed it and also was troubled by it at the same time. And this was at a time when I felt like a humorless, scolding feminist anytime I brought up things I was troubled by. So I often didn't bring it up. One of them being that there are no quote unquote normal women in this film. There are either women whose cleavage is out to here, who are absolutely gorgeous because they are like runway models, literally, or actresses. Or there are women who are completely androgynous or butch to play up that they're not real women. So there's two examples. One is when the military comes to Bruce Willis's Korben Dallas to say, hey, we need you to go on this. And this is Sergeant Ingborg. Or Iceborg. And it's this woman with like Princess Leia buns who is like, she's got a shelf of a bosom and she's like really beefy and she doesn't speak. And it's considered humorous that she would pretend to be Korben Dallas's wife. And then there is a very androgynous woman who is the president's aide. So, you see her, she seems to be very competent at her job, but she doesn't have a name. She's background, like she's not sexualized and she's not made fun of for her body. She's just background. And so I remember as a kid seeing this film being like, why are the women at the McDonald's drive-thru being sexualized? Why are the flight attendants so sexualized? Like, what are the hiring practices? To overthink it. And then the other aspect that really bothered me at the time, and I didn't have quite the articulation for it, but my high school boyfriend, I remember, said like, I can't believe that the Supreme Being has a dye job. And I was like, her hair is the problem you have with that? That's the problem with this being the supreme being who's perfect. Her hair. Her hair. But saying that Milla Jovovich is perfect and her body is gorgeous, but holding that up as an ideal. I have a poster hanging up in my office. It has a picture of Medusa, and underneath it says, "Beauty must be defined as what we are, or else the concept itself is our enemy." And that resonated with me. I have that poster for the very reason why it bothered me that they kept reinforcing that Milla Jovovich is perfect, and specifically when seeing her naked body. Because if Milla Jovovich is what is beauty, is what is perfect, then none of us can ever even approach perfect.
Even Milla Jovovich, presumably later in her life. I mean,
Yes.
I don't, what was she, like 20 or 25 when she made that movie?
She's the same age as you. So she was 22 at the time, or 21, 21.
I'm sure we'll get into this. It's very interesting too, to think about. You just used perfect and beauty in kind of interchangeably. It'll be interesting to talk about differentiating those two. But I interrupted you.
So this movie has always had this weird, like, uncomfortable spot in my literary DNA, like is the way we describe it, the furniture of my brain, because it is fun. It is a fun movie. Whenever we make poultry of any kind, I go, chicken good? Chicken good. Same thing with like multipass, Leeloo Dallas multipass. You know, like there's fun in it. I didn't even remember that this is where it came from, but there's a point where Gary Oldman as Zorg, the bad guy, he's showing off all the different things on this gun that he's giving to the bad guys. One of the bad guys, I can't remember what the aliens were called, and he's like, oh, and the flamethrower, my favorite. So like, you know, these things that are just part of my lexicon. And it is a visually delightful film. Like, it is so fun to watch. And part of it is women are scenery in this. So like, even as I was uncomfortable with the way that women are sexualized, it looks good. You know, like I understand why the male gaze is there, because it's very pretty. I enjoy looking at it too. But it's a part of that kind of not like other girls feminism, and like, hey, she kicks ass, so therefore it's totally okay that she's useless, kind of go girl feminism of the 90s that we grew up with in our teen years. And it's worth untangling. It's very much worth like unpacking all of the weirdness, the assumptions about gender, the assumptions about gender roles, the assumptions about other and whiteness, the assumptions about age. Bruce Willis was 42 to Milla Jovovich's 21 or 22.
Yuck.
Ew. Yeah. And watching it this time around, seeing like when they meet and like he's smiling and he's got these, you know, like laugh lines around his, his crow's feet. And he looks great. I mean, like, I'm older than he was. I am now older than he was then. And he is a very handsome man. And those laugh lines are charming. But looking at him, and then the camera pans over to Milla Jovovich, and she is completely smooth like an egg, because she is. She's this tiny baby. I mean, like, she's not, obviously, but she has no laugh lines because she has not lived long enough to grow them.
Really interesting. I'm sure we'll get into this, but it's really interesting to point that out when the character is meant to be ancient, right?
Yes.
So it's like having your cake and eating it too. Mm-hmm. He's not a pedophile because she's not 22, but the actress is. So we get to still have our like huge age gap. This is the perfect body, fantasy without the creepiness of the big age
He's old
gap.
enough to be her father.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah, because in fact, she's ancient.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet, even so, I watched it relatively recently. So my family does a family movie night. We try to do it weekly, and we each take turns choosing the movie. So my spouse chose Fifth Element to show the kids sometime in the last 6 or 8 months. And so watching it then with the kids, I was like, ooh. And then I watched it again last night so that I was ready for us to talk about it, because within the last 8 months was not quite recent enough for me to be able to talk intelligently about it. And I had fun watching it again last night, even as I was like, oh yeah, that ain't okay. That's not okay. Oh, I'm not okay with that. So it is a very fun movie, but ugly messages can be wrapped in pretty packages.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to really unwrap that package, but let's start. Can we start with a synopsis of what happens?
I'll try.
Let me explain. No, it's too much. Let me sum up.
So, film starts in Egypt in 1914. We learn that there is a temple in which there are stones representing 4 elements: earth, air, wind, and fire, and then like a sarcophagus with the 5th element in it, which is a supreme being. And together those 5 elements work to defeat an unknowable evil that comes about every 5,000 years. A race of aliens called the Mondoshuans come and take the elements away from the temple in Egypt because they do not trust humanity, but they will be back to help humanity fight off this horrible evil in 300 years when it comes back. So in 300 years, it comes back. The president of the Federation, which it's not really clear what he's president of, who is played by an actor named Tiny Lister, who is like 6'6" tall. He's a very commanding black man, which was considered extremely progressive at the time to have him cast as the president, is telling his military to attack this ball of something that's speeding up. It is the terrible evil. The descendant, the priests who was guarding the 5 elements in 1914 is told by the Mondoshuans to tell his successors what to expect. So the 300 years later successor, played by Ian Holm, is there explaining what it is, and that they should not attack. What they need to do is get in touch with the Mondoshuans, try to find the 5 elements. The military tries to blow up the dark planet, is what they end up calling it, or Mr. Shadow is another name for it, are unsuccessful and get killed. The Mondoshuans come into the federated space, and they are on their way to Earth to try to bring the 5 elements to Earth to defeat this thing. And that ship is destroyed by a ship of other aliens. It's like Mondawans or something. I don't remember, but they're kind of like dogfish face things. And they destroy the Mondoshuan ship. There are no survivors, but they have a few cells left over from what was in the sarcophagus, which is the 5th element, the supreme being. So they basically 3D print the supreme being back into life based on the couple of cells. And that is Milla Jovovich. Her name is Leeloo.
Whose character's name is Leeloo.
Whose character's name is Leeloo, yes, which we don't know yet. She escapes from the facility where she was 3D printed and ends up in the cab of Korben Dallas, played by Bruce Willis, who helps her despite the police coming after her. She tells him the name of the priest, Vito Cornelius, and he goes to the priest, brings her. She has conveniently passed out. Oh gosh, shenanigans ensue. The reason for the aliens destroyed the Mondoshuan ship was because a human named Emmanuel Jean-Baptiste Zorg, who is played by Gary Oldman, and he deserved better.
He had like a weird plastic thing on his head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he apparently hated it. He did this because he owed Luc Besson. Luc Besson, who wrote the screenplay and was the director, had helped him to get a passion project done. And so he felt like he had to do it. And he apparently hates the film. I don't blame him, because Gary Oldman deserves better. So does Ian Holm, quite frankly. Anyway, so he is like extreme capitalist. He's only in things for profit. He is purely evil. So anyway, he wanted to get the 4 stones and sent these other aliens to get them. They got the case, but it was empty because the Mondoshians did not trust humans, and they entrusted the stones with someone else. Turns out they entrusted them with an opera singer, a diva named Plavalaguna, who is going to be at this planet called Floston for a major concert shenanigans. Just trying to sum up. Once the president and the military understands what's going on, they want to send Korben Dallas, who, though he is a cab driver now, retired from the military about 6 months prior, and he is the best man for the job, to go undercover to meet with Plavalaguna. There are several people who try to take his identity. There are several different ways people trying to get there by trickery, and he ends up going with Leeloo, gets on the plane. Because the way that they got him there is they rigged a contest, so it made it look like he was the winner of the contest. And so because of that, the DJ Ruby Rod, played by Chris Tucker, is consistently like trying to get him to talk and stuff like that, even though he's trying to do a discreet private operation. There's a lot of humor in that, in the way that Ruby Rod presents himself and the way that Korben Dallas responds to him. Once they are at the hotel at Floston Paradise, there is another attack by the same, I wish I could remember the name of the kind of monster-headed aliens.
Do you want to look them up?
Yeah. Mangalores. Mangalores. I don't know why I have trouble remembering that. Okay. So once they get to Floston Paradise, Plavalaguna is having her concert, and there is an attack by more Mangalores. They want to get back at Zorg. They also want to get the 4 element stones because they know that Zorg wants them. Plavalaguna is shot. She reveals that the stones are in me. I never understood, how is she going to get them out? Like Mucinex? Not Mucinex, Muesli.
Yeah, snot. She'll snot it out. Mucinex is, it's a possibility.
Yeah. Like and she's not that big, and they're not small stones. Anyway, so Korben breaks her open and grabs the stones. There's a shootout. Meanwhile, Leeloo is kicking the asses of multiple other Mangalores, who very hilariously say it was an ambush when it was, 120-pound woman. So Zorg also ends up coming to the hotel to try to get the stones. He sets a bomb. They manage to escape right before the bomb goes off by stealing Zorg's spaceship. So Korben Dallas, the priest who stowed away on the plane, Leeloo, and then Ruby Rod, played by Chris Tucker, they head to Egypt, to the temple, and they are able at the last minute to save everyone once they figure out how to get the stones to open. And Leeloo at that point has given up and has decided, why is the point of protecting life when you see what you do with it? And Korben Dallas is able to convince her that there are some things worth saving. And she's like, oh, like love? And he's like, yes. And she's like, I don't know love. And he's like, well, I love you. And that fixes things. And then you end with them back in the same pod that she was 3D printed in, having sex when the president shows up to congratulate them. It's so weird. Seriously, if you haven't seen this movie, you kind of have to see it. And Luc Besson wrote it originally when he was 16, which explains a lot.
All right. So that was the not quite concise summary, but as concise as one can get, perhaps. with this film. So you named a few things that you wanted to talk about. I would really love, if you don't mind, if we could start with gender and something that you said, which I don't know if you said it just now, but you said it to me before we started recording, was about the performance of gender, not just women, not just female gender, but also masculinity.
Yes. So it is really interesting looking at this from the lens of what is masculine, because with the exception of the president, Korben Dallas is the only completely masculine man in the entire film. So early on, there is a general who is the one who says, like, we need to shoot and destroy this. And he gets himself and the entire ship killed. And so he has like a kind of like warmongering masculinity, but it's shown to be deadly. Toxic. Then there is, I'm not going to remember his name, the major who we see over and over and over again, who was Dallas's previous commanding officer and is the one who comes to tell him about the mission. He's played by Brian James. He is there when they create Leeloo, and he goes to the pod where she's being created, and he checks before he gets closer to say, like, is that safe? Like, and they're like, yeah, it's unbreakable glass. And she punches through it, grabs him by the balls, and like brings him forward and breaks his nose. So he is unmanned by her.
Yeah.
Then
she literally grabs him by the crotch.
Yep.
I don't remember that. Okay.
Yeah. Then there is the priest, who is considered generally to be a good person, but he is very asexual and kind of like lacking in any kind of power. He's shown to be kind of ridiculous. Like when Korben Dallas and Leeloo show up, he immediately is like, okay, I need to wear something. Like, what am I going to wear? It's like, it's got to look dignified. And what he ends up wearing looks ridiculous, and his concern with what he's wearing is kind of made fun of by the film. Then he's got his like acolyte, I'm not sure what you'd call him, but his like priest in training who's working with him, David, who is shown to be kind of like, Weasley is a little too strong, but he's also shown to be kind of weak. And
is he the one that has the monk's tonsure? David?
Yes.
Yeah, my recollection is that he's shown to be cowardly.
Yes. And then actually I'm going to do Ruby Rod last. On the hotel at Floston Paradise, we very briefly meet the head of security, and he and all of the people who work there, the men who work for the hotel, are wearing shorts and like kind of a sailor kind of outfit, which actually doesn't not make sense, considering like it's a pleasure cruise. Like, you know, it's a reasonable uniform, but it very much makes him look childlike. And he is the one who, I don't know if you recall, the Mangalores have the priest as a hostage with a gun to his head, and says, anyone want to negotiate or we'll start killing hostages. And Korben Dallas says, because he's the head of security, says to him, like, do you want to do this? He's like, I don't negotiate. I've never known. And so Dallas goes in and just shoots the one in the head that has the priest in a chokehold. And the head of security goes, where did he learn to negotiate like that? So like, it's very much unmanly. And then there's Ruby Rod.
Wait, what about Zorg?
Oh, thank you. Yes. Zorg is also interesting because now this is something had never occurred to me. I read something, and I'll include the link in the show notes. It was an academic paper talking about othering in this film. One of the things that they talked about is that Gary Oldman, who is a white actor, is othered in this film in a way that is subtly Asian coded, in that he's got that black hair that's kind of like long and like glossy, and then
it sort of flops like almost like I can't think of what it's called, but the Chinese,
well, like
cultural
a bowl cut. Yeah.
No, I'm thinking of the The one
Oh,
long
okay.
braid.
Yes. Yeah. And that had never occurred to me because I just didn't read it that way. I entirely get how it could be read that way, but that it's just, I don't carry those cultural assumptions.
Yeah, it's also just presented as so bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
And he is a white actor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he's wearing like a coat that almost reads as a dress. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, well, and it's also like his accent is so weird. He has this weird kind of southernish accent, and Oldman is British, isn't he?
I don't know. I don't know.
He was in the Harry Potter films, so I believe he was, because I think that they tried very hard to cast British actors, and he played Sirius Black. So like that's part of it too, because that accent is just so bizarre. But he wears, like, you're right, it's something kind of like, it's long and flowy jacket, and then underneath of it he's wearing this like iridescent rainbow tunic. And so he is another character who's kind of coded as not manly.
And dangerous in this case.
Yes.
So we have the not manly who are ineffective and cowardly and weak.
Mm-hmm.
But here we have this not manly man who's actually very dangerous.
Yes.
Who
Yes.
is potentially Asian coded and also potentially queer coded because of
Yes.
the dress.
Yes. What's interesting is he and Dallas, who are like, they're basically the hero and villain of the film, are never share screen time. They never act against each other. They never meet each other.
Interesting.
Yeah, which I hadn't noticed until like I was reading about it, and I was just like, oh, that's true. There's a second of screen time where Dallas and his crew are getting in an elevator to leave the hotel when Zorg is arriving, and so like just a fraction of a second where one elevator door is closing and another one's opening. So it's interesting because they are paired as opposites. You know, there is something very asexual about Zorg. There is no sense of him having any interest in anything other than money and power. And then he has a limp, which is another aspect of it.
Oh.
So like the ableism in the idea that someone who is like a proper man has a fully functioning legs. So let's get to Ruby Rod because he's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do it.
So he's played by Chris Tucker, and in some ways he's my favorite part of the movie. Partially just because Chris Tucker is having a ball.
That is my recollection of that character, is that he's just having so much fun. Not Ruby
Yes.
Rod, but Chris Tucker.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It was like they were like, what do you want to do? Do it. Go. And he's like, yes, I will.
And then they were like, no, more.
Yeah. And what I read was they had the costumes. And so the first time we meet him, he is wearing a skin tight, like unitard, like it's like pants and like it comes up and like his shoulders are bare and it's in leopard print. And then the rest of the movie, he is wearing something that you'd wear to an opera, which is the same sort of like unitard pants, but it's black with roses around the collar. And again, like his shoulders are bare. It's very feminine coded. And Chris Tucker, apparently, upon seeing his costumes, that helped him decide on how he would play the character. They have also said, I've read, that the character was based partially on both Prince and Michael Jackson. And the part was offered to Prince. And I'll have to see if I can find this because I wasn't in my research today. But I've previously heard that Luc Besson accidentally really offended Prince at a meeting. And he was just like, no, I won't have anything to do with that. Which is how Chris Tucker got the job. What's interesting, so he is very feminine coded and kind of queer coded in a lot of ways. So he's wearing
very much so.
Yes.
Very much so.
He's wearing lipstick. He's wearing very feminine coded clothing. He has a very high pitched voice. Now, part of that is Chris Tucker has a high pitched voice, but he plays it up. And he does a lot of like screaming, like when he's terrified and things like that in a very feminine coded damsel in distress kind of way.
Yeah.
He also has 3 like people who work with him who are very queer coded, who he like, how was it? And they're like, oh, it's so green, which is his like word for good or cool. And they're, when they can't find him, they're like very queer coded, distraught.
Distressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have that, but we also have that women describe him as sexy.
Yeah.
He is shown multiple times to be heterosexual or at least interested in women, because when the plane is taking off, he is seducing one of the flight attendants. And then there's another point where he talks about a woman. She is the daughter of a king or emperor or something like that. And he's like, oh, she told me recently she loves to sing. And then he plays I have a recording of her voice, and he plays the sound of a woman moaning, which so gross, like so gross. Anyway, so he's shown to be interested in sex with women. But I find this interesting. It is suggested that he is going down on the flight attendant. So he's performing oral sex on her. And I think that's interesting, because a manly man would only accept oral sex or be interested in penetrative sex.
Interesting.
Because it's played for laughs.
Yeah.
So,
you know, it's knowing that Prince was the target for that role really changes in my mind, like deepens the sexiness to all genders, because you're reminding me of the evidence that Ruby Rhod is interested in and has sex with women. But like in my memory, he's just like a queen, you know, like in my memory, he is a gay man. So if it were Prince though, like if I think of that character as Prince, as played by Prince, that sort of sexy to all genders and like, who knows and why the hell not? Like that actually jibes for me with Prince. Like the way, like in my mind, culturally, the man just sort of like oozed sexuality, which appealed to everyone. And I don't know what Prince did in Prince's bedroom, and it's none of my business. and the persona that he kind of gave us was that, you know, the more the merrier. Maybe not all at once, but certainly there wasn't. It didn't seem like there was like a genital check.
Yeah.
Or at least for the persona.
Yeah.
So so that's really like, that's giving it texture in a way that I didn't have for that character. So that's interesting.
What's interesting, and it's that same academic article that I read that I mentioned earlier, by coding Ruby Rhod now, and Ruby's first name is feminine, and Rod is a synonym for
Phallic.
By coding him in that like both and kind of way also is an othering that has to do with the way that our culture looks at Black men. In that they are both, you know, considered less than white men, but also hypersexualized, which is also fascinating. And then also thinking of that character had he been played by Prince, what that would mean. You know, it brings in other strange things, because Prince lived in this, because he was Black, but he lived in this kind of, since he was multiracial, I feel like there was a sense of like okayness in white culture for Prince that there wasn't necessarily for
Chris Tucker.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So It was very weird watching, like, because you also see, because Korben Dallas is our audience stand-in in responding to Ruby Rhod. And he gets to like kind of, he never actually rolls his eyes, but he's basically rolling his eyes the whole time.
And he's not attracted to Ruby Rod.
No. He actually, at one point when there's a hotel employee, a woman, is showing him the room, and she's telling him, he's asking if he can get tickets to the opera because he needs to meet with the diva. And she's like, oh, you have a ticket, and with Ruby Rod. I love him. He's so sexy. And you can see him going like, what? What? That doesn't make any sense. It's a really weird, interesting portrayal, particularly since for so many people, he's the best part of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there is something like, in some ways, I feel like it made that kind of over the top queer coded queen behavior. Like when he goes, bzz, bzz, and like stuff like that, you know, part of you is just like, can I do that? I love that. It's very, very interesting, but it definitely is like Besson very intentionally wanted to show that comparison between Ruby Rod and Korben Dallas.
Korben Dallas is a real man.
Yes.
Yeah. And we know he's a real man because he gets to have sex with the perfect being.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's...
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's talk about then performance of female gender then.
So, oh goodness. So we talked a little bit in a previous episode about Born Sexy Yesterday. And that is the trope that Leeloo basically embodies, which is a woman-shaped creature or being who is unutterably wise and yet profoundly naive at the same time. Leeloo is a perfect example of this because when she first is born, basically, she knows nothing of English language. She knows nothing of what Earth is. She does not understand how things work. And she is coded as being very good at something masculine, fighting, but otherwise being so fragile and needing the guidance of someone who understands the world. I can remember other examples of this.
We talked about it when we did our Wonder Woman episode, where there's, and actually vis-a-vis war in particular, I think we get that from both Wonder Woman and from Leeloo, where the outsider who's very wise but naive can look and say, but why would you do that?
Yes. Yes. And this is a common trope in science fiction. It was only named in the past like 10 years. I think less than that. I think 2017 is when it was named. But I can remember in the original Planet of the Apes, the Charlton Heston Planet of the Apes, the woman he goes around with, I think her name, he called her Vega, but I don't remember for sure, is like this passive, beautiful woman he has to protect, who doesn't understand things that seem clear to him. So like she's born sexy yesterday without any skills. She's just someone for him to protect. There are similar things like that. So because of this, Leeloo is treated like a child by everyone. I mean, Dallas treats her like a child constantly. When she first gets to when Dallas brings her to the priest's apartment, the priest says to Dallas, like, please wake her, but gently. She is mankind's most precious possession. Ew. Ew. And like, you couldn't have said humanity. I mean, not that that makes it much better. Her performance of gender. Now, like the first thing I thought this time around watching it was they recreate this creature who is not human, but looks human. And they keep referring to this creature as he until they have like, you know, completely 3D printed her and, you know, she is there and they can see her naked body and they're like, oh, it's a woman. And I'm like, this is not a human. Why would you assume its gender?
Well, in 97.
I know. But she's wearing basically just bandages for the first.
But even when they give her clothes, it's like a seat belt. It goes across her nipples and across her genitals, right?
Yes, that is. So she's wearing bandages. I think I mentioned before we started recording, the costumes were designed by the French designer Jean-Paul Gaultier, I think. I think that was his first name, who was, is, I don't even know if he's still alive.
I don't know if he's alive, but Gaultier is a major brand.
Major brand, yeah. And in his contemporaneous review, Roger Ebert mentioned that he did the design, and he said, yeah, Gaultier, he starts by covering the essentials and then stops, is how he described his designs, which, yeah.
That's certainly what Leeloo is wearing, yeah.
But she is treated in a feminine way. So when David goes out to get clothes for her, he brings back clothes and he's like, I didn't know your size. And like you said, it's a sweater that stops right underneath her breasts. And then this like orange plastic rubber thing that like goes over her shoulders and then like connects down it's like a V through her crotch. And then she's wearing like these silver leggings. First of all, I don't think you could get those clothes for someone if you didn't know their size. Like these clothes are not going to fit if you don't know someone's size. So he gets that for her and she's very excited. Oh, thank you. Milla, thank you. And then he got her it's a makeup box that honestly, I would love it if they invented this because it's really cool where like you put it to your eyes and it puts on the makeup for you.
I would wear makeup every
perfectly.
day.
I know.
I would wear makeup every day if they made that little box.
So fun. But she's super excited by these things, by these trappings of femininity. Well, how does she know what they are? Why is she excited by them? Similarly, when she is like recovering in between the hotel and going to Egypt, and she has been learning English by watching these screens, and learning about the history of the earth by watching these screens. And she's going through it alphabetically. And she's like, I'm on V, which for one thing, Luc Besson, really? I'm on V. And Dallas says like, oh, there's some great words in V, like valiant, vulnerable, very beautiful. And she smiles. Ugh. I know. To be feminine, she is vulnerable. I mean, she's valiant, vulnerable, and very beautiful. Like that says it right there. But her being valiant is kind of it's not a joke exactly, but when they get into the plane, Korben says to her, like, we're not really going on vacation. I'm like, this is before mansplaining was coined, but that is such fucking mansplaining. She's the supreme being. And he's like, you got to stay out of trouble because I have to protect you. And she's like, no, you know trouble. I protect you. And he's like, yeah, sure, honey. And even the fight scene, which is really cool. Like she has a very, very cool fight scene, but it's one of those, and some of this is just, I don't know, like fight choreography's gotten better or what. But even 20 years ago, I remember noticing that the Mangalores wait and attack her one at a time. Yeah. And it's just like there have been much better versions of that, like Atomic Blonde, which came out a few years ago and has Charlize Theron in it and has similar sorts of like fight dynamics where because Charlize Theron is another one who's like just tiny and up against these very big men. And one of the things I liked about that film was the fact that they show her fighting the way a 120-pound, 5'7" woman would fight a 250-pound, 6'2" man by using things in the area. Like there's one point where she takes a lamp out of the wall and uses the cord, and like she fights quote unquote dirty because that's the only way that you can win if you are fighting against someone who is so much bigger and stronger than you. So like I think some of this is that I have in the past so many years gotten like, no, seriously, can you do a choreography that looks more realistic? And like, this is a ridiculous film. But
Yeah.
it undercuts the one thing she's supposed to be good at, is undercut by the fact that the Mangalores wait and attack her one at a time.
Yeah. While we're on that, because so she's mankind's most precious possession. The thing that she's really good at is fighting. She's perfect. Let's unpack that perfection, especially vis-a-vis beauty and ageism and gender. Yeah.
So the thing that I noticed, and I tried to say something to my kids when we watched it like 6 or 8 months ago, is that every time they refer to her as perfect, it is when you can see her naked body. It is not about her brain.
It's my recollection that it's not like while they're watching her fight.
No.
She's lying there naked, like lying down. So it's very much about her being the perfect
object,
the perfect sex object specifically.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, the head scientist in charge of 3D printing. So what happens, she like punches through the glass, she grabs Brian James, manages to get herself out and runs and leaps through the wall that is made of gold aluminum foil for some reason. It's seeing her leap through the wall. He goes, perfect. So it could be argued that it is about what she has just done.
Rather than lying there naked.
Yeah, except that, it's also like, oh, now seeing that body in action. But it's then that she's described as perfect.
Is that how it's delivered too? The way you just sort of whispered it?
Perfect. Yeah, just like that.
Oh yeah. That's not an engineer, admiring an elegant solution.
So the other times when she gets changed, when David brings the clothes that he could not possibly have gotten the right, she starts getting changed because she is so naive as to not realize that you can't just get naked in front of men. David and the priest turn around so that they're not facing her. And David says, she really is perfect. Yes, I know, is what the priest says. And then Dallas has someone, I think it's his immediate boss at the cab company, it's not entirely clear, named Finger, who he has 2 different phone conversations with. The first one is in the establishing scene when we first meet Dallas, and Finger is talking to him about his ex-wife. He's like, you're not still pining for her. That slut, cheated on you, and there's millions of women out there. Yeah. And Dallas says, I don't want millions of women. I just want one, the perfect one. And then later on, after he's met Leeloo and delivered her to the priest, and he's like, his cab is completely destroyed and he's lost the remaining like points on his license, which allow him to drive. And like, so he's in trouble with Finger. Finger calls and he's like, I've been waiting all day for you to come for the overhaul for your cab. He's like, oh, you ever have one of those big fares just land in your lap? And he's like, yeah, how big? And so he starts describing her. He's like 5'7", blue eyes, perfect skin, or I don't remember what else. He's like, and all physical descriptions, perfect. So him loving her is entirely about how she looks.
Yeah.
Ew. Ew. The other aspect that I did not really articulate, like it always bothered me that Dallas is in the center with her when she activates the weapon that destroys the great evil. Because he's like, you have to do whatever it is, and I love you, and blah, 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 blah. And so something I read this morning was saying that we are left to believe that the fifth element is love, which means Leeloo is incomplete without Dallas.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm.
16-year-old male fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we overthink here. That's what we do, right? Deep thoughts. So I just was reading this article about the science of love, and scientists are breaking it down. They say there are three elements to love now. There's lust, there's attraction, and there's attachment. Because there's the science of oxytocin and all the different chemicals and things as well. Like, we can have attachment and attraction without lust. Thank God for familial relationships. And we can have lust and attraction without attachment. But without attachment, I'm not sure it's actually love.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're seeing here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, Dallas has lust and attraction. Does he have attachment to this person? You know, or does he even have attraction without lust? Like, I'm not sure.
Well,
it's really,
it's a very condescending attraction, it feels like, because like, as I said, he treats her like a child the whole time. And even there's a point where he tries to wake her gently. And so he goes to kiss her, and she grabs his gun and puts it to his head and says, in her language, she says, "Never without my permission." And so she's holding him at gunpoint, and he's trying to introduce himself. Like, "I'm Korben Dallas. What's your name?" And the priest comes back in. And it gets in between them, and he's like waving at her with one finger, like you would to a baby. Do you remember the movie Barton Fink?
Yeah.
So, listeners who haven't seen it, it is a very weird Coen movie. But
yeah, weird.
Yeah. So the main character, he is a writer who is contracted to write a wrestling screenplay. And so it's about a wrestler, and they're telling him like all the elements, you know, and like, so have him meet a woman or a kid that he needs to protect. And the character ends up like having this amazing experience. I don't even remember exactly how it came about. And he wrote the most transcendent thing he's ever written in his life. And the studio is not interested. It's like, no, got to have a dame or a kid that he has to protect. I am thinking about this because basically what we have in Leeloo is both.
Both, yeah.
And I'm thinking about like how common that trope is, that there is a hard-bitten, you know, cynical man who learns to have a heart again because a woman or a child needs his help.
Yeah. Yeah. Whew. It's kind of cliched.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot that's ugly. I mean, it's, and to the point where like even 18-year-old me watching it was like, I'm really enjoying myself, but this is not great. Like, why were there any women involved in making this film?
Yeah. Well, we've actually been talking for a long minute now. Are there any other key points that you want to make sure that you make before we wrap us up?
Just that there is, I mentioned how casting Tiny Lister as the president was considered progressive, but it is also undercut. And though he is not unmanned like the other men in the film, you never see him being decisive. You never see him. He is always anxious, concerned, confused. You overall end with a good impression of him. I have always liked him as president. But you also don't get to see him being the hero that Korben Dallas is. And in fact, Dallas like hangs up on him at one point, which that's pretty telling about who has the power.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I think that scene when she says never without my permission, I feel like that's another one where there's a certain progressiveness in this sort of consent matters.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's completely undercut by the structure in which that message is given.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the same way that, you know, it's amazing seeing Leeloo fight. But for one thing, it's undercut by the fact that she immediately like shuts down after like Zorg comes in and she escapes into the ceiling and he's shooting at her. And like, yeah, that's terrifying. There's also a suggestion that she is psychically linked to Plavalaguna and feels when she dies. I didn't necessarily get that, but that was another thing that I read this morning. I was like, okay, I can see that. And that also would be part of her grief and why she shuts down. But then I was thinking about it this time. I was like, so she doesn't know war, but she knows how to fight.
That's all she knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, presumably she killed the Mangalores that she disabled in that fight. I mean, maybe not all of them, but why?
But they're other.
They're other. Yeah.
I mean, and that's really like the tragedy of war. We're doing it to ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. If we do it to others, and that's how we sell ourselves on war as well.
Yeah.
It's layered. Yeah. I'm not saying it makes sense. It's kind of circular.
Yeah.
But
yeah. It's interesting how we give that naivete as like, oh, well, she understands better than we do. But at the same time, like, oh, honey, you just don't understand.
Right. We want it both ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the wisdom and the naivete. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm going to try and reflect back some highlights from what I heard. Number one, this is a very clear textbook example of Born Sexy Yesterday, the trope in which we have a unbelievably wise and yet also very naive woman who is a sex object who needs to be cared for. And we get what you just described. She's smarter than all of us. And oh, honey, you just don't get it. We had really interesting conversation about gender. So both masculinity, where we see really a range from toxic masculinity that is punished. It leads to destruction of those who exhibit it, through a very effeminate masculinity in Ruby Rod, which is sort of kind of lampooned. It's a laugh. It's a opportunity for us to laugh. And then we get Korben Dallas in the middle, who's like a typical, he's a man. He's a man's man. Not toxic, but not one of those girly men.
Just competent.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what makes him a man, is that he is competent.
And he gets the ultimate reward, which is the perfect being as his girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talked about femininity and performance of femininity, which is all about thin, white, young, beautiful in Leeloo, who we hear over and over again when we see her naked body that she is indeed perfect. This 22-year-old child who is actually an ancient being. We talked about the ways that othering comes in ways that maybe escape notice on first view. I'm thinking of Zorg and his potentially Asian coded appearance, and also like the ways in which this villain was othered with the sort of potentially Asian influence and the way that he looks, also the weird American accent, also the ableism of the fact that this man has a limp.
Oh, one other thing. I watched it on Amazon Prime, and in the X-ray they have like trivia.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One of the pieces of trivia is that Zorg is consistently framed with a circle, whereas Dallas is consistently framed with a rectangle. And I found that very interesting because to me that seems like there's feminine and masculine.
Yeah.
And then considering the fact that the dark planet, Mr. Shadow, like the evil thing, is a sphere, and then the stones are they're
square.
They're square. I mean, they're triangular, but they're square.
Yeah.
So there's
almost obelisks. Almost.
Yeah. So there's like a phallus and vulva type thing going on there in a way.
We also have fashion from Jean-Paul Gaultier, which covers the essential bits and then stops
on the women.
On the women.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
although To be fair, Bruce Willis spends most of the movie in like this orange tank top that is form-fitting, and in the back has like vents. Like, so it's, I wouldn't say revealing, but it's not what most 42-year-old men would choose to wear.
In my mind, some of the most damning of your analysis here is in thinking about Korben's role in the final moment, in the denouement, when Leeloo is having a crisis and is kind of like just despairing, like, why bother? Why should I bother saving life? And he's like, no, there are things worth living for, like love, and I love you. And then the implication then that love is the fifth element, which means that Leeloo is incomplete without this washed up cab driver who she just happened to fall into his cab. What's interesting, we didn't say this, but I'm trying to articulate this here. What's interesting about Dallas is that in some ways he is an everyman. He is an audience stand-in. He's not meant actually to be particularly exceptional. But in other ways, he's completely exceptional, right? He's the right man for the job, for this like crazy, dangerous, and high stakes mission. We're shown through your analysis of masculinity, he's the only one who gets it right of everyone that we see on screen. So there's this like push and pull. This whole movie is about push and pull. There's this push and pull with Dallas that hurts even more in my mind, that Leeloo is incomplete without him. Because she is exceptional in every way. In yucky ways, we're told that she's exceptional. And so that this exceptional woman, who's not even a woman because she's not human, is incomplete without this like
washed up 42-year-old who's balding and has bleached his hair blonde.
And
like, I mean, like, I don't want to be
ageist. Like, I'm older than this dude, but he has no ambition. He has like, he's not trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
He's not.
His apartment is horrifyingly small. And dirty.
He's not. It's not even like we're not even given this guy as he's making the best of a not great situation. He's just surviving and seems fine with that. And that she could be incomplete without that feels all the more painful that she's incomplete. So that, I don't know if I fully articulated that without like denigrating sort of whatever, a middle-aged dude just doing his best. But
it's not that it's a middle-aged dude, like, because middle-aged dudes are great, or can be. It's and this is conflating actor and part, but he's 20 years older than her.
Yeah.
And that's what feels gross.
Well, he's not supposed to me, that's actually not it. Because he's not supposed to be. Within the actual story, he's not 20 years older than she is. I think what bothers me is that we're given this, not like other girls, exceptional feminism in Leeloo. And then sort of any man will do. I think that's kind of, and that's not quite fair to the character of Korben Dallas, but it's not completely unfair either. Yeah. And I think that's what I'm grappling with that pairing, even within the universe that was created with Fifth Element. What did I forget? I'm watching the time and feeling.
Oh, the only other thing that we didn't end up talking about was there's a little bit about class distinctions that is interesting, because that's another way that Dallas and Zorg are opposites, because Dallas is blue collar. He lives in this tiny, dirty apartment.
Yeah, he's hand to mouth. Clearly. Yeah. They make that clear with the conversations with Finger. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Zorg is an unrepentant capitalist who is so bent on profit and power that he makes a deal with Mr. Shadow, which doesn't even make sense because everyone would be dead, including him, presumably.
Right.
So there's that. And then there's the scene in the airport. There's trash everywhere. It got cut out of the actual dialogue of the movie, but the reason there's all this trash is because the workers are on strike. So the world of 24th century New York is pretty stratified.
Yes, that is very clear. And also police state, like in a kind of terrifying way that stayed with me. Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot. This movie has a lot. We would probably do like a part two because I feel like there are things we didn't even get to.
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't even seen it that recently, and I feel like there are things we didn't quite like. I think there's probably a lot. There's probably more to say about race
Oh, sure. Yeah.
than what we did. I mean, this we talked about the fact that this like this thin child is the perfect being who is also white.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I'm sure we could keep going, and I'm gonna be thinking about this one for a minute. Also just really fun to watch, despite some of the ugliness.
Yeah. I would love to hear what listeners think about this movie, about our analysis of it.
Yeah, what did we miss?
Yeah.
Help fill in the gaps for us. You can reach us at guygirlsmedia@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can find us on social and post a comment, or go to our website, guygirlsmedia.com, and go to the listener forum and let us know what you think. Next time.
You're bringing something to me, aren't you?
Yes. Next time, I'm going to bring my deep thoughts about Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Woo! Darkness falls across the land.
Yeah. I'm thinking about like watching it with Dad at the apartment in Carriage Hill. I don't know if you remember. Anyway.
Gosh, yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to bring Michael Jackson's Thriller to our next episode. And I think you have maybe one listener comment.
I have a listener comment from Livia on the Rocky Horror Picture Show episode. She writes, "Oh my, memoir of a wasted youth. So many hours spent in theaters all over the country with that movie." Because, oh man, seeing it at a midnight showing is so much fun.
Yeah. Audience participation. All right. Well, until next time, Em.
Until next time.
Do you like stickers? Sure, we all do. If you head over to guygirlsmedia.com/signup and share your address with us, we'll send you a sticker. It really is that easy. But don't wait, there's a limited quantity. Thanks for listening. Our theme music is Professor Umlaut by Kevin MacLeod from incompetech.com. Find full music credits in the show notes. Until next time, remember, pop culture is still culture. And shouldn't you know what's in your head?